Welcome to Andy's Garage. I'm Andy Phillips. Today I want to talk about Harbor Freight tools. Let's go ahead and get started. Now before we get started, just to kind of explain why I'm doing this right here, because this is going to be an overview of all the tools I have from Harbor Freight, and we're going to talk about how they perform, if they're junk or not. The reason I decided to do this is, if you've been watching my videos for any length of time over the years, you'll notice that in a lot of them I use tools that I purchased at Harbor Freight, whether it's Pittsburgh, Central Pneumatic, those kind of brands that they carry, Bauer, things like that. I always get comments from different people when I do that. Oh, they're junk and it's Harbor Freight, that's garbage, all that stuff. So I figured, you know what, let me do a video and let's actually dive into this, because some people just assume they're junk. Other people have had bad experience with them. So we're going to look at, I'm going to go over not all the tools, because I have a ton of other power tools that are not necessarily needed for vehicles that I use, that I've purchased at Harbor Freight. And we're going to take a look at what I have here, the different brands. We're going to talk about them. I'll have also links to different product reviews that I've done on some of these, so you can see them in action for yourself. But I just wanted to take the time to talk a little bit about them, let you know issues that I've had with them, how they've performed for me over the years. Another thing to mention, a very good friend of mine, he is actually in upper senior management in a major automotive company here in the United States, and he oversees a lot of the technicians. He also is a faithful customer to Harbor Freight as well. He's got a ton of tools that he's purchased there, and he does a lot of work on his own cars too. So they're obviously not junk for him, and they seem to work well for him as well. But let's get the camera in here. Let me show you what I have here, and we'll dive into this. Looking here on my workbench, I have a few tools set up. I have a lot more, but these are the ones that we're going to talk about here. I may bring some other ones in later, but just to go through these, and then we're going to get some close-ups, and I'll talk more in depth, but I just wanted to overview what we have here. We have a DA sander and buffer right here, pneumatic, that I've used for finishing vehicles, sanding vehicles, even used it for restoring the windshield on a friend of mine's Le Mans race car, the polycarbonate windshield. I'll have that link down in the description if you want to see this thing in action. And then these are just some of the extra pads for it. But this thing here, very inexpensive, haven't had any problems with it. We have this guy right here. This is probably my most popular tool in my videos. This has been featured in so many because I've had this Chicago Electric impact wrench, just a little electric impact wrench plug-in. Had it for about 10 years. I've used it for doing all kind of work to vehicles. Lug nuts, axle nuts, suspension nuts, bolts, all that kind of stuff that I couldn't get off in some cases, even with a breaker bar. And this thing came in handy. Very inexpensive. I believe I got it for like $30-some. I think they still sell them at Harbor Freight. I have heard some people say they don't, but I believe I saw it when I was there. But definitely highly recommended if you want an inexpensive and reliable impact wrench that doesn't require the air tank being pneumatic. Then here I do have a pneumatic one here by Earthquake. This one is a very powerful one. I believe it claims to have, I think around 1200 is the torque on this thing. Haven't had it as long, only had it I believe about 2 years, so I haven't had a chance to put it to the test like with this one. Then we have this oscillating power tool right here, Chicago Electric. That's the only power tool from Harbor Freight that I've had to replace, actually. I had one before. We were doing some work on a vehicle. If you've been following my channel, I have a Lamborghini Countach replica that I've been restoring. We were doing some body work to it, and I'll have some links down in the description on that restoration project if you want to see that in action. But the fiberglass on the body is very thick, so I think I overheated it and burned it out, but that's the only one I've had to replace. Then we have this grinder right here made by Drill Master, which is another brand that they carry. It's more the lower line as opposed to like Bauer and Earthquake and Hercules that are the higher ones there. Drill Master, you can get some of their stuff for under 20 bucks. Had this thing here for years, used it for all kinds of stuff and never had any problems with it. Then we have this here. This is the Earthquake pneumatic impacting ratchet. I'll have the product review across the top, also the link down in the description if you want to see that in action. Haven't used it a ton. I have used it a few times. It worked great, but that's another good one. Then we have this one here. This is made by Pittsburgh, which is another one of their kind of so-so brands that they have. A lot of the tools that I have, like we have this go-through or pass-through socket and ratchet set. I'll have a link across the top, also down in the description for the product review I did on that, where I explained how to use it and why you would use it. But Pittsburgh is kind of like their lower tools. I have a lot of wrenches and stuff made by them. Never had any problems with anything stripping or anything like that. But this right here is a Torque wrench, I also have a smaller one. I've had this thing for years. I'll have a link across the top, also down in the description, where I show how to use a torque wrench, and this is the one that I use on that. It works great. Then we have this little thing right here. This is another, this is Central Pneumatic, which is another line that they carry. This is almost kind of like a little pneumatic Dremel type tool for like grinding and just kind of carving and things. I used that when I did some body work. We were doing some rust removal on a Jeep Wrangler. I'll have the video down in the description where I used that. But put one of the bits on there, cleaned it up very nice, kind of like a Dremel tool. Worked really good. Then we have this here, Central Pneumatic. Right here, this is a cutoff tool. I've used this thing a ton over the years for cutting thick plate steel and cutting parts of the suspension that were stripped where I had to cut the stabilizer link off, all kinds of stuff. I really put this thing to the max. I use it a lot. Sometimes I feared it was going to burn out because it was getting hot, but this thing is still working great, very inexpensive. Then we have right here this plastic welder. This is the newest addition to my tools. I'll have a link also down in the description where I show how to weld plastic. I use that. Highly recommended getting one of those. They're very inexpensive. And then I have a whole bunch of just sockets and adapters for impacting socket, like those extensions and adapters, things like that. Different socket sets, deep sockets, shallow sockets, all that. I go to Harbor Freight for everything to start off with, and only if I can't find it there do I branch out, because outside of, like I said, with this oscillating tool, never had to replace anything. So we're going to get in some close-ups now, and we'll talk more in depth about each one of these. Now, I have to say, okay, I am not a professional mechanic, so it's not like I'm using these tools 40 to 60, 80 hours a week constantly, which a lot of the mechanics that are commenting are professional mechanics. That's their job. I have a full-time job elsewhere. I work on cars on the side, working on my cars, family members' cars, friends' cars, things like that. So the tools are not used on a full-time basis, which might be a different story. So I just want to put that in there. In addition to these, I also have a air compressor that is off there in the corner that I've had for years as well for the pneumatic tools, and that works great. And I have tons of other tools for more home improvements like routers, drills, jigsaws, things like that, all working great. But once again, they're not being used full time, so that might be another story. So if you're a professional mechanic and you're looking for it, if you are going to go with Harbor Freight, because if you have a budget, you can get better deals on the products that they have than if you go elsewhere with Milwaukee, things like that. If you're going to do that, I'd recommend going with the Bauer, Earthquake, Hercules, like the higher brands that they have, and not with the Drill Masters and things like that, just because I don't know if they can handle the stress of being used, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So let's get up here up close and we'll look at each one of these. For this DA sander here, it has a nice grip. It's actually got some nice weight to it. All metal right here, has kind of like a rubbery plastic cap on the metal. You have a nice grip here. This is a little flimsy, you can see, kind of loose, just a basic kind of angled piece of metal. But it's got some weight to it. It's got a good grip to it. You can adjust it right here. You can swap out the different pads or buffing wheels, and you pretty much just unscrew them. You have a lock right here, and then when you lock it, you unscrew it, put the new one on. So this was a very inexpensive one because I was only going to use it for just a couple times, and that was it. So I went with this one, but can't complain. Moving on here to right here, this impact wrench, Chicago Electric. It is bulky. You can see it compared here to this one. It's pretty bulky, very heavy, but it's well made. I mean, this thing is solid. Solid metal right here. It has the plastic back on it, but it's got a nice weight, nice grip to it. You have your controls here. You have reverse and then forward right there. So it's an easy toggle right there when you're using it, but it has a nice grip to it. If you got to hold it here, you can stabilize it. And as mentioned, I have used this thing many, many, many times, and it has not failed me yet. This here is just a cheap little sander by Drill Master. I mean, there's really not much to say about it. I got it, I think it was less than 20 bucks, like 15 bucks or something. Has a nice little grip to it. The plastic on the Drill Masters are a little bit cheaper feel than on like the Earthquakes and things like that. So it's Kind of a cheaper plastic, but hey, it works. Never had any issues with it, and I've used it for doing a lot of sanding. So inexpensive, not a bad deal right there. As mentioned already with this one, the oscillating tool, did have to replace it once, but just like with this other Chicago Electric, it's pretty decent made right here. It has a nice metal front right here, has a thick plastic, nice good grip to it. You have your switch on and off right here. Blades, it comes with the hex tool to loosen that, and you can swap out the different blades to it. As you can see, these right here are cords, so you don't have the rechargeable. So if you're looking for more practicality, then you might want to get one that takes the batteries. I personally like to plug in because that way you're not fooling around with the battery dying and all that stuff. I just run an extension cord and I'm done. Or like pneumatic. Now this one here, the Earthquake XT, this is the pneumatic impact wrench that I recently got. It's got settings here on the back, forward and reverse. Has a nice grip to it, very solid weight to it. All metal right here and a very thick plastic back here, not chintzy or anything like that. It has a nice quality feel to it. This was a more expensive one, but you get what you pay for, and I'm happy with it. It works great. You will need an air compressor, obviously, because it is pneumatic. So let's move on down here. Here's our Drill Master 4.5-inch angled grinder. As mentioned with the other Drill Master, it has a lot of plastic on it, and it's a thinner plastic. You can even feel it. More hollow. Now it does have some nice weight here with the metal. The metal is a little more of a hollow sound than on the Chicago Electric. But like I said, I've had this thing for years. I've used it a lot, put it to the test for grinding, cutting, things like that. It has never failed me at all. I even used it one time to grind down rust on the frame of one of my vehicles, a large section of it. Grind that all down. And then also when I was welding the steel plates to fix the frame, use this for cutting it, and this thing was being put to the test, and it worked great. Very simple, just on and off. Very inexpensive as well. Then back here we have these Hercules drill bits, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, but these are the titanium drill bits for drilling through steel. I've had these. They work great. Sometimes when you're dealing with these type of drill bits, they can get stripped real easy and break and all. These have been working great for me, so I can't complain with that. Then we have this here by Earthquake. This is the impacting ratchet, and I know when I did the product review, I had a lot of people saying it's not impact, all that nonsense. Well, I'm just telling you what they claim and the description. So that's what it claims to be. Works great. Very well made on this one as well. Nice solid metal up here. Has a nice solid feel to it. It's got good weight to it. And then you have your handle right there. So you can power it on and let it go. Pneumatic, so same thing. You'll need an air compressor. But this one's well made. It was a little more expensive. Coming here to the torque wrench. As mentioned already, I've used this thing a ton. Any jobs I do requiring proper torque, I always use this thing. It works great. I do recommend exercising it, they call it, every time before you use it, just to take it up to the highest point and the lowest a few times to kind of reset it before you use it. It just keeps it working well. But well made, nice and solid. As mentioned, I've used it a lot, and it's always come through for me. It was fairly inexpensive as well. Here it is. You hear it? And on top of that, it also had has a case that it goes in, which, let me grab it right here. Has this nice case here, so when it's time to store it, you can put it in there and keep it safe instead of just slopping it around. It's a decent case. It's plastic, but it's thick. It's not thin where it's going to fall apart. Then here we have this one here, which is like the Dremel tool. This one here is made by Central Pneumatic, which makes some of their other pneumatic tools, like the air compressor I have is Central Pneumatic. They are cheaper. This one here is all metal. The metal is a little bit of a cheaper metal. Doesn't have that nice solid feel, but It was very inexpensive. I needed it for a job I was working on, so I went with it, and it worked great. Same thing, you'll need the air compressor for that, but has a good feel to it. I like that aluminum stainless steel kind of look to it because it's just easier to clean and has more of a neutral look to it. And then you can get different attachments that slide in there to do your job. And then here we have this Chicago Electric right here. This is the cutoff tool. I have had this thing for years as well. Same thing like with the other Chicago Electrics. It's got nice solid feel of the kind of the heavy duty plastic. A lot of weight up here with this with the metal. I've used this thing to do a lot of stuff. Any kind of cutting with metal and steels and things like that, I use it and it always works great for me. Once again, though, you will need an extension cord because it's obviously not rechargeable. And then we have here, this is the welder that I just bought. And I believe that this right here, this is Central Pneumatic. No, I'm sorry, Chicago Electric is who makes this one here. I think it was 10 or 15 bucks. It was very inexpensive. It's basically like a beefed up soldering iron. And then you have your iron head right there on the front. Highly recommend getting one of these if you're working on cars. It comes in handy for welding plastics and bumpers and things like that. As mentioned already, I'll have the link down in the description where you can see how to weld plastic where I use it. And just a really good tool to have, easy to use, does a great job. Then we have this here by Pittsburgh. This is the go-through socket set. Nice chrome, very well made. When I posted the video, I got comments of people saying, oh, that's, they saw the Pittsburgh on there. They were like, oh, it's Harbor Freight, it's junk. This thing works great. Highly recommend getting one of these pass-through or go-through socket sets. As mentioned already, the video where I go into detail as far as why you need it and what it is, all that will be down in the description. But these come in handy if you're working on cars in those tight spots. And then the cool thing with this is, I mean, if you want to put it into a toolbox, you can. I like leaving it on here because then you can just hang it up and it's got all the bits right there together. And then if we come over here, I have this little toolbox with all of these bits right here. We have O2 sensor sockets right here. We have these here. We have these extensions. I have the spark plug socket. I have some impacting sockets and adapters ranging from the big stuff to the little stuff. I got all this at Harbor Freight and never had any issues. I will say, though, I have had a couple of the chrome ones because if you're using impact sockets or even if you're using a breaker bar where there's a lot of strain, these aren't as good. So you want to make sure that you use the impacting ones, which are these here. They're stronger, but I have had a couple of those break because of putting them under too much stress. And this is just taking a look at these few items right here. I've got a ton of stuff under this workbench here. And for the most part, I would say 95 to 98% of it I purchased at Harbor Freight. Even some of their toolkits, like the tap and die cutting set, which I have. And then I also have the bearing press. I have the fuel line where you can flare the lines for connecting it. Different kits like that I've purchased there, which have been great. I've used them over and over and over again. Never had any issues with them. Let me get a close-up of some of those for you to see them. And you can see all of them line up under here, different kits that I have. And most of those came from Harbor Freight. But here's one here, bolt type wheel puller set. This has the adapters here for connecting to a hub puller, which I have under here as well. Used this thing before, no problems. You have all the different attachments and different pieces that go with it. Yeah, the cases could be a little bit better. They are like a molded plastic, but you can see it's a little bit flimsy, not as thick as like some of the better brands. But hey, it keeps it in there, and if you take care of it, you're fine. There's a fuel injector pump test. I've used this thing for over a decade for checking fuel pressure and different things. It has some additional adapters and connectors to it. Works awesome. Very inexpensive. Same thing here. You have this little case, same kind of material, a little bit flimsy, but you just got to take care of it. Then, as mentioned earlier, we have this tap and die set right here. This comes in a nice case. You have all of the different attachments that go in here. I fell right here. Definitely comes in handy if you have to do any tapping or the cutting, all that stuff. I've used this before when I had to actually rethread a CV axle one time, and it worked great. I've used it for some other things too with nuts and bolts that were stripped. Definitely something I'd recommend investing in. This was a little more expensive because it had all of the different sizes, but you can get different ones. I'll have a link down in the description if you want to check it out, where I show how to use it and where we're actually putting it to the test. And as mentioned earlier, I have some of these other tools too that I wasn't able to show, but this is another Drill Master electric sander here. You can also put a buffing wheel on it. I've used this before as well. This is a bigger one. Plastic is a little cheaper, as we saw with some of the other Drill Masters, but as far as the performance, I've had this thing for about 7 years. It works fine. To be fair, I don't use it often, but whenever I do, it's reliable. And then as mentioned also at the beginning, I have some other tools that I didn't show in this video. Drills, jigsaws, routers, things like that have worked fine. I even have my my painting mask. If you saw the video where I was painting the Countach, I'll have a link down in the description as well, but this is what I used here. Nice mask. It's got good filters on it. It worked really good. That's pretty much it. Just wrapping up this video right now. Just wanted to go over this because, like I said, I get tons of comments of people saying, oh, Harbor Freight tools, they're junk. And I'm just showing you all these tools here, all the tools under here, and some that I couldn't even show you. And all it was this oscillating tool right here is the only one that I've had to replace. And to be fair, I may have stressed it out too much I was just really pushing it hard. And it's not a top of the line. So, you got to be fair here. You're not going to pay $20 and expect to get like a $200 quality power tool. So just make sure you know what you're getting into. But if you're on a tight budget and you're looking to get some decent tools, I would highly recommend going to Harbor Freight. I am not paid by Harbor Freight. I'm not getting any kickback from this video. This is 100% my non-biased, just personal opinion. As mentioned already, good friend of mine works for a major automotive company here in the U.S. and maybe even abroad. And he oversees a lot of the technicians. And he does his own work on his vehicles, and he's got BMWs and Jeeps and all kinds of stuff he works on. He goes to Harbor Freight too for everything. Harbor Freight is his go-to. And then if not, then he'll go beyond. So I hope that this video was informative for you, just kind of showing you the different tools, how they're made. I wasn't able to actually show them in action because that would be a very long video, but please check out the links down in the description. Down there, you'll see videos where I'm using all of these tools. You can see them in action. There will also be some product reviews on some of these that you can check out as well. Oh, and I did forget to mention, I also have a little welder. It's a little flux core welder that I picked up there years ago to do work on a car. Still works great. Not a professional welder, so if you're a professional welder, I wouldn't recommend getting that. But if you just want a little welder to do some work, here's a close-up of it. And that's just something that comes in handy if you want to. You just need to do some minor repairs on your vehicles and stuff. So I hope that this video was informative for you. I hope it helped you out, kind of understand some of the tools that you can get at Harbor Freight. Please send me any questions and comments. I would love to hear from you. And as always, I appreciate all the support. Please like the video, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.